from other places too. So be sure to come hang out with us and all the other Down to Dunkers. Michele, today is the last day the Thunder can extend Darius Baisley. They have a 5 o'clock Central Time deadline. And what's your feel for what's going to happen with Mr. Baisley and what is going to happen going forward with him?
So if I have to bet today, if there will be an extension or not, I think that would probably no. But I think that, and this was apparent to me the last few games of the preseason, and also in spots last season in the first year of Baisley's tenure with the Thunder. Baisley is a backup center to me in this league. And he didn't have all the opportunities to play that role compared to guys like Jerry and guys like that. So I think that he's best suited as, like, again, a big man that can do multiple stuff on the court, but has to be paired with a guy that can shoot the basketball and that occupies different places on offense. He was very good in preseason in duck-ins and occupying the dunker spot, attacking from the dribble when the center was not set and stuff like that. So I really wonder if in a different scenario, and I know that we mentioned, probably you mentioned Dallas off air for sure, but even on the record, if he finds a place like that where he can be this center, like Powell or guys like that, I think that he can work pretty well. And there will be probably talks about how Baisley was misused in OKC. It's part of the opportunity that he didn't have because there were multiple guys there, Al Horford, their favors. But I think that if he's not traded super duper early, we might see a version of Baisley this year because we have so many guys that can play the 4 that is better than what we saw last year.
Yeah. I think Baisley can play in the NBA. Don't misinterpret my thoughts on him not being like a guy long for this Thunder team as me saying like he can't play. I think he can play. I just think that he needs a specific role. And I don't think it's on this team. Like, does he want, I mean, you ask Baisley, like, do you want to be a guy that occupies the dunker spot almost exclusively on offense? I mean, I think he would say no. If you place him, though, at the top of the key, he just can't quite get there with the flow. Yeah. Like you can feel like the ball hit his hands and he's like, now what? You know, he'll jab step or he'll do something that just doesn't make a ton of sense and doesn't quite get the offensive flow. Where, like, I don't know that Jeremiah is as talented as Darius is as a basketball player, but he sure gets the things that the Thunder want him to get on offense.
Yeah,
he gets how to swing the ball, how to keep the offense flowing. He's a good screener. He shot the ball horrifically in preseason.
Yeah,
I'm aware of that. We also have a sample size of him shooting 35% from 3 last season when he did play, and that's in more games. So I trust that more than I do the preseason bad stretch. However, it doesn't mean that Jeremiah is like definitely a guy that's in like the 8-man rotation in 2 years. You know, I have no clue.
Yeah.
You know, but I will
8-man is not nothing. Like
No, it's going to be tough to make the 8-man rotation on this team if they have. Yeah. I mean, they're probably going to have a 10 or 11-man rotation more than likely. But to be in the top 8, you have to be good. You just have to be.
Yes.
They're going to draft somebody in 23 that's going to be good. And there are going to be guys that are on this roster today that we don't know if they're good or not yet that are going to pop and be like, holy smokes, like Trey Mann's like a really good player. Or like Poku is now like a really good player. Or Usman is now a really good player. We don't know who of those guys, if not multiple guys, will pop. So I'm not saying like, oh my gosh, like Jeremiah is so much better than Baisley. It's just crazy. I'm not saying that. Like, I don't know. We have a sample of Jeremiah being a pretty good player. We also don't have that large of a sample of him being that good of a player. And he's going to have a chance to play primarily center. One, because they don't have a center on this roster. Like, they don't have a real one. They have these makeshift centers like Jeremiah and Jay Will. Those aren't full-time centers in the NBA. You know, that's not.
Yeah, nowadays probably. But yes, those are not
Very
7
few.
feet.
I mean, there's a lot of teams that have really big guys playing that spot, at least starting. Like even like Jonas Valanciunas for the Pelicans. Like that dude is giant compared to Jeremiah.
Yeah, that's why you really need to have guys that space the floor at a certain degree. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. If you're short and you're not spacing the floor, then it's hard to play.
Mhm.
But if you are a matchup nightmare on the other end, then it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Baisley can make it on a team that has a ball dominant player. And he is expected to be a play finisher, only play in transition, defend. Like he can do those things. Like I have no doubt about that. Where it's just like, hey, you're going to do kind of as little as possible on the offensive end. And I think that he can succeed in that way. And maybe even it helps him develop a little bit well. But this team, they want, like, if you don't notice the trend, like they want decision makers. That's what they want.
Yes.
Like, look at the draft. Like every single guy they drafted is a decision maker, all the way to J. Will. I mean, J. Will, as limited as he is in a lot of ways, athletically, he's limited. As a scorer, he's very limited, but not as a decision maker. Like the guy can pass it. Like he can make cross court passes. You know, he's a good bounce passer. Like there's a lot of really good things about him as a decision maker. You can say that about every single guy. Chet, great decision maker. Chet's now in a boot. That's great. He's going to have the best one-legged jump shot in the NBA next year.
Hey, no Scooter anymore. So
yeah, no Scooter. It's great. Usman Jang, decision making was one of his things. J Dub.
Among many others. I mean, Oos is probably the guy that surprised me the most in preseason. Not because I saw flashes that I never saw in summer league or last year in NBL, but because he was playing, except for a few moments on defense, he was playing like okay basketball already. I mean, we saw Maledon playing okay basketball as well in preseason 2 years ago. So there is nothing to really conclude now, not even after the first year. But at least you have a guy that you want to see more of. And there's another one. Like there are probably 12, 14 players that you want to see on the court. So that is going to be tough.
Yeah, without a doubt. I have a hard time seeing Baisley as a guy who's a part of the future of the Thunder. Today at practice, Clemente Almanza had a video that he posted of Darius Baisley and Sam Presti sitting down and talking. Now, they could be talking about donuts. Like we don't know what they're talking about. I think I assume that Sam Presti wouldn't sit down in front of where he thinks the media are and having a conversation with Darius Baisley about his future with the team. Maybe he did. I doubt that he did.
It's all an inception. Like,
yeah.
Do you remember Andrew Robertson getting out of the room with Presti?
Yeah, all the
just
hugs and everything.
Hugging everyone and like boom speculations for hours,
amazing,
days. Man. I don't remember how long it lasted. Probably only a few hours because it was a deadline a couple of hours later. But it seems, hey, he's gone. He's gone. Look at that.
I know.
And no, I'm just a hugger. Come on, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But big shouts to Sam Presti and to Baisley for having that conversation in front of the media today. It's just really funny to me that they decided to do that. But yeah, I would expect they won't get anything done. If they do get something done, there would be value in getting a deal that is like below the taxpayer MLE done.
Mm-hmm.
Like a 3-year, 3-year, $20 million deal. There would be value had for the Thunder to get something like that done. I think that makes him very tradable. I think that makes him his value. I mean, he might have more value. He might go from like a top 35 protected second to an unprotected second for Baisley if you make that deal. So we're not talking like giant value here, but there may be value in doing that. And if he's willing to get those, if he's willing, sign a deal like that, then maybe you do it. However, if you're Darius, you probably want to bet on yourself and also know that those deals are, even for a player like Baisley, you might be able to get a little bit more because he's still super young. He's athletic. He can guard on the wing, and he's got a good agent. So, that may not be something that they're interested in, but that there may be value and there may be a number that the Thunder say, yeah, that makes sense for us. And Baisley says, sure, I'll take whatever I can get. And they just get a deal done. There's still a possibility. Now, it doesn't mean he's long for the Thunder, that he's definitely going to be on the team moving forward. But, there's a scenario where that happens. I would put that at like 15%, like pretty low chance of happening. But, it's not impossible.
It's also a type of contract that kind of defines your career a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't. Like Jeremy Grant signed a 3-4-9, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
And then he went on signing a very big contract later on. But there are multiple players that signs the first contract around 7, 8, 9 millions, and then they just coast around that number. Doug McDermott is one of them.
Yeah.
Where you are a NBA player, but not really much more. So it's tricky to sign those contracts. Teams don't want to have low contracts that are rising, so it's likely flat or even declining, and players hate that. So it's a difficult balance. It's a ton of money for normal people. So, and anything can happen in terms of injuries and stuff like that. So I think that there might be willingness, but also, I mean, he's super duper young. It has to be the right amount. I mean, I would not be terribly surprised if he signed something between 20 and 25 for 3 years, including some kind of protection on the team side. But again, you have to find a reason why. You don't just sign him and then you have no time for him. Like, you have to be mindful about the time that you have to spend on the first round picks.
Yeah. I mean, it would just be, hey, we're going to play you a backup center this year and see how it works.
Yeah.
And they could do that anyways. They could do that anyways and take him into the summer. And if they like what he did, give him a contract then. Like, this isn't the last chance for him.
Oh, no.
With the Thunder. If things go well and he's like, yeah, I'm great playing in the dunker spot, and he can play in a very switchy style of defense, which he can. It's really, to me, though, about the 3-point shooting. I mean, if you're going to have a guy like Chet out there, you want to have somebody spacing the court for him and somebody that can make a decision next to him too. And the fact remains that he hadn't shot better than 33% from the corners in his career. And in fact, last year was the best that he shot from the corners, which was 33%. The year before,
improvement.
The year before, 24%. His first year, 29%. And he's shot 34% overall his rookie season on a smaller volume, but he's 29% these last 2 years on a pretty big sample of shots. He shot almost 300 threes in his second season and 269 shots from three in year 3. And he's 29%, a career 30% 3-point shooter. Like, that's what he is. Did he improve? Maybe. But he's also a career 40% from the field. Like, he just, those numbers don't equal getting a contract extension. Those numbers equal a player that will have to fight on a minimum contract for a year and find a better place for him the year after this, and then go for it again. Go for another contract again. Like, that's just, those are the kind of numbers that somebody puts up that just hasn't made it yet. And if you put him next to Luka Doncic, I think that things could change. If you put him next to, even throw him on the Heat have done a lot of really good stuff with players like him. And so maybe it's just about situation for Darius. But yeah, Alex Bolerjack sounds like Charlotte. Do not banish anybody to Charlotte right now. That is the worst situation in the league. Like the James Bouknight news today.
Oh my!
Everything is just crumbling in Charlotte. I mean,
they have to ask yourself though.
Some of the worst draft picks in the last couple of years, just unbelievably bad.
Like, I don't want to to speculate or anything, but it's weird. Like all the things that are happening there.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very weird.
it's maybe it's not consequential. Like causation doesn't imply correlation or whatever. So the opposite though. But anyway, it's weird that they had young guys that behaved in stupid ways or very horrible ways. I don't know. Maybe those are their, like, either it's the evaluation or it's the process or it's just randomness. I find it hard to believe that it's random, but hey, maybe it is.
Yeah. It's whatever it is, it's bad. It's real bad. Let's talk about something that's not real bad. Right after this quick break, we're going to talk about preseason and some of the good stuff that we saw. And we're back after that quick break. Let's talk about preseason. One thing is, like, disclaimer, we're talking about preseason. So everybody can take all of this with a grain of salt if you'd like. But I think there were some actual things to take away. And maybe that's stupid. I don't know. I'm okay with being stupid every once in a while because I think there were some things that were pretty interesting in this. And I tweeted this yesterday. I was catching up on a bunch of the preseason games yesterday morning. And man, like, the thing that stuck out to me the most is that I think that we might have like legit Thunder minutes opening for Poku and Usman Jang. And those guys are probably like the two biggest like swing pieces on this roster that we're not necessarily counting on. Like, I think the guys counting on to be a part of this next iteration of the Thunder: Shea, Dort, Chet, and Giddey. I think those four are like, okay, like, I know those four can be guys that can play in the playoffs with an NBA team and will likely play with this Thunder team. Great. A lot of these other guys are swings. Like Trey Mann also, like, we need to discuss him for sure after this. He's a swing for the Thunder. He's looking really good. Jang at his size and doing the stuff that he did in the preseason was jarring to me. He shot 57% from the field. Like, that's great. 47% three. Not real, but it's great.
Not even the 57, but hey, that's not even the 57. That is not real. That was mainly against non-existing defense, but
yeah,
but it sounded not entirely fake.
I know. Yes, there are repeatable things from Jang that were happening in the preseason. One, his ability to slide his feet at 6'11". Like, he moves like a guy that's 6'7".
Yeah,
but he is 4 inches taller.
Yeah.
I'm not totally unconvinced that I think he might be 7 feet. He's huge. He's giant.
Yeah,
that was
he's
one
tall.
thing that players were saying to me on media day. We're just like, man, he's huge. Like, he's a big guy. And I'm impressed. I don't know that he works out. I don't know that he's a guy that's going to be a monster in this league or not. But boy, does he have a chance. He's got a real chance to be a real player in this league. And I didn't think that we would see this for a little while. You know, he was 11 points, three boards, 1.4 assists to 2 turnovers, which he needs to clean up. Like that, there was some stuff there. Now, the biggest thing that's going to hold him back, and the thing that Mark has kind of hammered home, is that he just is not physical enough.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like, he just isn't. Like, he's not. You watch him versus like Dort, who's easily the most physical player on the team, and their world's different. Now, he doesn't need to be Dort in order to be successful, but he's got to have, like, give him 20% of the physicality that Lu Dort has. And then we're talking about like a real player at 6'11" that can shoot, that can defend. You know, even though he's not physical, he just knows how to defend.
Yeah.
Which I think is huge. I think, like, comparing him to Darius Baisley, I think like Baisley can defend in a one-on-one matchup really well.
Mhm.
He's got the athleticism to stick with guys, but I don't think he's gotten better. But like, if you talked about him at the same point that Jang is at today, like he didn't grasp concepts like Jang does right away. Like Jang, you can just see him thinking the game at like a pretty high level for a 19-year-old, which also just gives you more encouragement as to like, oh man, like there's a real chance that this guy works out.
Yeah, I saw good things from Jang, and a few moments where it was kind of lost, and especially when they were playing zone. He was not comfortable with it. He missed the corner twice. It's not the position that he's used to play. He's used to play the wing position that stays
Right.
in front in the in zone defense. So if you play 2-3, then usually the guys that are behind are the big men, and is clearly not into that role yet. But he understands spacing and he knows where to be. The thing that impressed me the most about Jang is his ability to take the ball on the move, putting it on the floor, and just attack. He did it a couple of times, like running through screens, then getting a pass, put the ball on the court, and just get to the rim. That is impressive. The fluidity, the quickness. You're right. He's not physical enough. He shies away from contacts at the rim. He's not strong enough. There were a couple of layups that he missed just because he was not strong enough. But he looks young in terms of body. He's not like bulk up or anything, and he has broad shoulders, broad chest. So he will be able to sustain a bit of heavy lifting during next summer and during this season.
I don't know if he'll be good, but I think that he can look the part.
Yeah.
His body is going to be able to his frame is going to be able to take on a lot of muscle.
Yeah.
An encouraging thing too, if you look at his shot chart, is he's basically just taking threes and shots at the rim.
Yeah.
And
that's valid for everyone.
Sure. That's the Mark Daigneault offense. Like there are very few, and this will change whenever Shea gets back in because Shea is great in the mid range.
Yeah, he's allowed, and Chet will be allowed too.
Yeah, Chet's gonna be great. He's gonna be great. But yeah, it's man.
Yes, we have to talk about man.
I just have so many questions about Mark Daigneault and where the heck did this guy come from? Like I know his story. His story is unbelievable. I want to be able to tell it with him on a microphone at some point. But the story of him becoming an NBA coach and turning some of these guys into NBA players is it's astonishing to me. I mean, you talk about Trey Mann and who he was at the beginning of last year and the way that he played basketball. I just didn't know if it was going to work because he had a lot of improvement to make. Now, it's a huge testament to Trey, who he is right now. It's huge because he has worked really, really hard.
Yeah.
On his body, on his game, on his shot, on his physicality himself. You can see him, that 20% of Dort that I was talking about, Jang adding, he's added it. He's added that to his game where he's more willing to stick his nose into the fight than he was
on defense.
Yeah.
On offense, at the rim, I expected a little bit more from him. I was hoping to see him dunking a little bit more,
against the
finishing
Pistons,
a little bit better.
It was not great.
Yeah.
That was a rough game. But his money's going to be made on those deep threes.
Wow.
And he's 5 feet behind the line and shooting him with ease.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is a testament to the strength that he added in the offseason. Man, I'm kind of blown away by him. He had 19 made threes, the most threes made in the preseason. And those aren't real numbers. Like you don't really take in and do anything with preseason numbers. It's just kind of cool to see. But I am pretty amazed by the shooter that he is. And I thought he'd be a good shooter. But, I mean, there are very few guys that take those deep range threes off the dribble.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Steph, it's Lillard, it's Trae Young. The list isn't very long of guys that will just pull up from there. And Trey Mann, I'm not saying that you need to put him in that group. I think that's a ridiculous group to be put in. But he's got a chance to be there. He's got a legitimate
It's unfair now. It's unfair now.
Yes. Yes. The expectation that he's a part of that group right now is absolutely absurd.
Yeah.
It's unfair to him. It's unfair to the coaching staff. It's unfair to Sam Presti. It's unfair to everybody to place him in that group. But if he can just be like, I think that he can easily be that microwave scorer that I've, talked about him being. Defensively, he's going to have to be a lot better, and that's going to be a process that takes not weeks but years for him to get there, and he's got time to do it. But for him to become like a starter on this team, like it's going to take some time for him to become
like 2 weeks.
You think it's 2 weeks? I love his game. The one thing that I loved when I was watching yesterday was that when he got fouled on a shot at the rim and made it, he screamed and won. And this is just such a little thing, and everybody does this. But Trey Mann, I've had a few chances to talk with him. He just is such a soft-spoken, and like childlike, like aura about him. And the fact that he's out there playing not with that same aura, but with like a this is mine, this is my team kind of aura, is like that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see out of him. And he was showing it in the preseason. Now, will he play like that against the Timberwolves when he's playing against like a real team? I mean, that is something I'm very interested in. And now we haven't even seen him play with Shea. We haven't seen him play with this new cast of characters all together. We've kind of seen him be the guy out there. How does he complement Shea? How does he complement the team whenever it's Shea and Dort and Giddey out there if they play smaller and he's with them? How does he complement them? I think is a big question. But you have to be encouraged about what you've seen from Trey Mann, especially with the type of players that were drafted around him in the 2021 draft. I think that people were disappointed with that pick in a lot of ways. I think that people... Yeah, I was kind of like, well, I don't know what to do about this. We have Teo Maladone. Should we really draft Trey Mann?
No, I said that I wanted Trey Murphy.
Yeah. And still, like, you can make the case. Like, Trey Murphy's also on that list of guys that have made the most threes in the preseason.
Yeah.
And he plays more of a position of need for the Thunder. But, yeah. Jason Stewart in the chat says, Andrew, are you wearing a robe? I'm not wearing a robe. I'm wearing a sweater. It's sweater season. Here in Oklahoma now. I think it's like 40 degrees outside, something like that. So
really? It's crazy hot here, like 80
really?
or 90. Yeah.
90?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, 90 is 30 Celsius, something like that. It's close to that, by the way.
Yeah. Wow.
It was very hot. I ate outside yesterday for lunch. So it's
sweater and chilly weather here in Oklahoma. Have you had chili, by the way? Have you had chili?
What's that?
It's like a meaty tomato-y soup.
Oh, chili, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Mexican food.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, not Mexican food.
No, I don't know.
No, it's okay. Okay.
Tex-Mex. No.
Trey Mann. So Trey Mann. Any other thoughts on Trey before we move on? We kind of skipped over Poku in my first little thing, so we need to talk about Poku. But anything else on Trey?
Yes, I think that he plays well no matter what's the role, and that is something that I really like. And I just had the feeling that when he was on the court, the defense was playing in a different way, and everyone had miles of space.
Yeah.
And this is something that I can't shake from my head. It's not the same with Wiggins. It's not the same with Dort. It's not the same with anybody else. I just want to see him playing 28, 30 minutes a night.
Yeah.
If it starts, if it doesn't, it doesn't care. I don't care. But it has to be a lot of minutes. And Poku deserves some minutes as well because he played really well. except for a few minutes at the end of one game where he started like doing backflips and trying to like throw the ball and whatnot. But that was a moment. For the rest, Poku was very solid. He was a veteran out there, and again with him as much as Trey Mann, the team was playing better with him on the court, and that was clear to me.
Yeah. I mean, his preseason stats: 47% from the field. Hallelujah. That's normal. That's just like a normal basketball player's number. That's great. 30% from three, not quite 39, but we'll take it. 80% from the free throw line, which is good compared to everybody else on this team. There were some pretty atrocious free throw shooting on this roster. But 5 boards, 3.8 assists, only 2 turnovers. He looks like an NBA player out there, and he's got to prove it against some really tough teams to start the season. And I think he's going to have a really good chance to start for this team and play big minutes against the Timberwolves and against the Nuggets and then against the Timberwolves again on opening night. And we'll see if he's ready, because he has the same problem that Jang had, where he just doesn't play a physical brand of basketball. He started to. He looks a little bit better. He's had some time to develop. He's had 2 full seasons to develop. I feel better about him not needing the G League this year, which it was a legitimate question. It was a very legitimate question, and I don't think he's going to. The team, he had the second best plus minus on the team.
Yeah, behind J-Dub.
Yeah, plus 12.5. When
J-Dub was 22.4 something.
16.8 by the
end. No, then I didn't check after the last game.
This is on NBA.com too. So this is
yeah.
But I'm impressed with Poku. I think Poku's going to have a chance to be a real player in the NBA as a guy who can help protect the rim. He can play in transition. He's going to need to make more threes than he did in preseason. He's going to have it at a 33, 34% for you to feel pretty good about that. But I mean, that's in the preseason. If he makes just a couple more, like, he's there. So we're not talking like a giant margin from where he was in the preseason to where he needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he can get there. I was impressed with Poku. There's a lot to be excited about with him. Let's talk about Jalen Williams out of Santa Clara, J-Dub. 14.4 points per game, 3 rebounds, 5.2 assists, only 2.6 turnovers, plus 16.8, as I mentioned. Shot 61% from the field. He didn't take many threes. He only shot 22% from 3.
2 out of 9.
Didn't take very many. Yeah, 2 of 9. He made he took 2 corner threes, one from the left, one from the right, and made both of them. He missed all of his threes from above the break. But you have to be. I mean, we talked about being drafted in the sweet spot a lot leading up to the draft, and I talked about the guys that were drafted in that range and how you don't really want to be picking 7 to 10, but you really want to pick 11 to 15. There are a lot of good players selected in that range, and he like fits the mold of a guy who would be good in that range, because he's a little bit older. He was a junior. He kind of does a little bit of everything, but there's not like one thing that pops. He's not like a tremendous athlete, but he's a good enough athlete. And man, did he look good in the preseason. Like, he looked like the guy that he was at Santa Clara. And that was part of the worry, was he's playing against this lesser competition. There's been one other guy drafted from Santa Clara since 1996, and that was Steve Nash. Nobody else. And you just don't know, like, how does that translate? And so far it's translating very well. Like, the guy just knows how to play basketball. Like, he's passing tremendously. He plays in transition. He gets to the rim. He splits the defense. He knows how to move. Like, there was an inbounds pass from Giddey to him where he just the ball felt like it just snuck through to him just because he was in the exact right spot and he's able to finish at the rim with no contest. I mean, there's just so many things about him where you're just like, yeah, like this guy is good. Like, this is an NBA player right here.
Yeah. He looked great on the defensive side. He was putting the hands in a cookie jar against everybody. He was aggressive, physical. I think that the part of his game where you can see that he's not used to NBA speed and athleticism and size is the shooting. If you look at the film at Santa Clara, he had more time to take those three. He had smaller defenders on him because he was playing point guard. So it's all different here. It will take time to adjust completely on the offensive side. He's not a super great shooter. You can tell that the touch is not elite. You can tell it from the free throws and stuff like that. So I have still questions about his shooting. But as I said in the last OKC Dream Team podcast, I think that the shot is not broken. So there is room to work there. If Chip England can work with Giddey, he can surely work with J-Dub in due time and like get him to a different level. But I think that his best quality is how much he's poised on offense. He just knows how to play no matter who's on the court with him. He knows how to slide as an off-ball guy. He can play on ball, and he just never ever force it. So, and the way in which he finishes at the rim is impressive. Like it's not easy to just be to have a certain pace that throws the defenders off and just gives him the smallest, tiniest advantage that he can just exploit with layups and stuff like that. And he wants to be physical. That is something that I really like about him. And I wonder, like, why not starting him and Giddey? Or just bringing him soon with Trey Mann. I mean, you can do a lot of stuff with him on the court, but I think that he will challenge at least two starting players for the entire season.
Who are those starting players that you're mentioning?
Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, I do. I
think it's probably Poku and Dort, or Kenrich and Dort.
Yeah.
He'll have a chance. I mean, Dort has to be extremely good in order to keep J-Dub, off the court.
Yeah.
He has a lot of pretenders for his spot. Lu Dort.
You're such a hater, man.
I'm not a hater. I just saw exactly the Lu Dort I remember with close to the same percentage.
He's got 35% from three.
Close to the same percentage. Usage rate that is way too high for my tastes. And I just see a team that whenever Dort was on bench was playing better basketball. I am a hater. I just worry about the usage rate. I just worry about that.
Yeah, I mean it's got to change, but also like he wasn't playing with Shea. And
sure,
I want to see him play with Shea and with Giddey, and then ultimately with Chet. And that's the thing that I think is one of the more disappointing things about Chet not playing is that we were going to be able to see. And I don't think that Mark Daignault and I don't think that Sam Presti and everybody else signed Dort thinking that, oh, this is going to be a 25% usage player, a 30% usage player. I think they thought he's going to have to be a corner three guy, an advantageous scorer, and just the most dogged defender that you've ever seen. And like, that's what I think that's the expectation. Now, things shift. There are guys that I like on this roster as scorers. Trey Mann, J-Dub. I think that Giddey is showing some stuff as a scorer. Then there's just like, who knows? You know, like I don't think of Poku as like a particularly potent scorer, or Baisley or Jang.
Poku doesn't need to.
Or Giddey. He's way more opportunistic, but I'm just saying that now Chet was going to be a focal point of the offense.
Yeah.
A guy that scored a lot. Like he was probably going to be the second leading scorer on this team. And now they need somebody else to step up. Lu Dort has done that. in his career, and there's no reason for him to have to step back now. To me, it's one of the more disappointing things, because I want to see what Lu Dort looks like as a role player, period. Not a guy that takes 12 shots a game, And I mean, if
12, I would be happy with 12
he only
possessions on offense, not shots. Possession
you,
that he finishes.
you don't like, 54% from the field, 35% from three. Is that not good enough for you?
No. No.
And with the defense, I don't know, man. I feel like you have wild expectations for Dort.
I liked the way in which he played, I think, against Detroit. That game was good.
Yeah.
He didn't force it. There was a point in the first game when he just hoist threes after threes after threes.
Hey, I know it's the preseason.
Yeah. And then the last game, he took 4 threes in the span of a minute and a half.
Yeah, it's awesome.
No, it's terrible. Give those shots to Trey Mann.
Yeah.
Every of those shots should be
how he plays with Shea, because he's going to play primarily with Shea. He's going to play a ton with Shea. And so I want to see that. I want to see how that manifests itself, because I agree that he did kind of take over a little bit, but I don't know, man. It's a preseason. You're playing against, they played some bad teams. They played some really bad teams.
I know.
Detroit looked terrible. Detroit looked.
You don't like Killian Hayes? Shame on you.
Hayes played great. Hayes had a game. Everybody else was pretty bad. The Spurs game was close, but the Spurs aren't good. They played 2 teams that aren't even in the NBA.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to see what Dort looks like in a role where it's like, hey, your job tonight is to defend Anthony Edwards and take corner threes from Giddey. Because when Giddey and Shea are in the game, there's not a lot of room for him to just go off. I think that it would be like, what? Then I would be like, what are you doing, man? If he is
but even
same stuff.
Like you mentioned, 12 shots.
Yeah.
54% from the field, 35% from 3. Mm-hmm. And I asked the question, I asked Brett and everyone who discussed with me on Dort.
Mm-hmm.
Would you guard him? If you are the opponent, if you are Anthony Edwards, would you guard him or not? To me, the answer is always no.
Always no. No, I'm not always no. I'm not always. I think if he is a career 35% from 3, he's the kind of guy that we had been wanting in Oklahoma City for a long time. That like this good defender that is actually able to do something on the offensive end.
Sure.
35% from 3 overall. If he can be somewhere close to 40% from the corners, which he has been, I think that's a shot that you have to guard. PJ Tucker is not a great offensive player, but PJ Tucker shoots it from the corner. Do they have to guard him super tight? No. But he's a majorly impactful player every single year. The guy is old now. In NBA standards, and teams are just like, we've got to get that guy. The Sixers right now are just like he is such an important piece to them in the playoffs, and I think Dort can be a similar impact player in the playoffs.
Let me put it this way: if Dort is your worst shooter on the court, you can be happy.
Yeah,
it's not the case.
Yeah, I don't think that the Thunder are under any impression that he's going to be a guy that's going to be like a focal point of the offense. Like I don't know how you could think that. Like that's not what I think. I think that he is ultimately going to have to be pigeonholed into a role and not be the 17 point per game score. Like I just don't think that he's going to be that. But he's got some room to develop, and I know that he doesn't always fit within the flow of the offense. but you need guys to defend on the perimeter. Like, you just flat out need those guys, and it's why the Thunder signed him to the deal that they did.
Sure.
Like, you have to have those guys. Now, I don't care if he comes off the bench or starts or whatever. Marcus Smart has come off the bench a ton for the Celtics, and has been a guy that has been so impactful for them. And I think Dort can have a similar impact to a team that's winning. I think you need to have those guys. And so you play Denver. I mean, Jamal Murray, I already mentioned Anthony Edwards, like John Morant. Like, you just have to have somebody to throw on these guys, and that will just go all out. And I think they will find offense elsewhere. But I also think when the ball hits his hands, like, you also have to have a guy that can shoot it. We saw what happens with a guy like Andre Robertson, who is just terrified to shoot the basketball. Terrified.
No, that's an improvement. And again, I think that maybe in 2 years we'll just say how stupid Michele was 2 years ago. He is now our worst shooter, and he's shooting 36%. That is great. It can happen. I still think that whenever he's not the worst shooter and you have to rely on his spacing, you can't.
Yeah.
This is reality for me right now. He can be better. I mean, out of college, I thought he could be like a 25% 3-point shooter, and he improved to.
I didn't think he was going to make it as a shooter. As a guy, if you told me that at the draft, like, this guy's going to score, and I don't care what the context is. It doesn't matter what the context.
No, it doesn't matter. He improved dramatically.
15 points per game.
Yeah.
I mean, I would have said you are nuts. You have lost your mind. Like, there's no way that guy who's throwing the ball so high it's scraping the ceiling at Arizona State, that guy's going to be able to do that. There ain't no way.
Yeah.
And he's been able to pull that off. I mean, it's been pretty astonishing to see what he's become. Now, his next development is, can you function in an offense and on a team that is built to win?
Yeah.
That's his next step of development, in my opinion, is like, can he be your fifth best offensive player and not take the amount of possessions that he has? Because I think ideally that's what he is.
Yeah.
That's what he has to become.
And you can tinker with the lineup and just maybe play Giddy and Mann a lot together, and maybe you play Shea Dort and Jade up together. You can mix up things in such a way that you always have good shooters on the court. And you just play the starters 2 minutes, and then you start shuffling. That is also something that can happen and probably will happen. I expect Dagnall to experiment a lot. This is the season to play hard every single night, let the team assess themselves, but just try everything that you want and play the 11th and 12th pick a lot, because you at the beginning of the pod you said you don't count on Jang and Jade up being something for you, but you kind of are in a way, because those are number 11 and number 12.
Yeah.
And you need to have some production you expect some production from them. Maybe not this year, but in due time, yes.
Yeah. Their development is crucial. And that's part of the reason why I've said they need to find a different spot for Darius Baisley, because the investment that they made, they already had the 12th pick. They had to trade 3 picks in order to get the 11th pick. You have a ton invested in a guy in Ismail and in Jalen Williams. You need to have the minutes to develop them. You can develop guys in practice. You can develop them with the blue. You can do all that stuff. I don't think either of those guys need the blue, by the way. But the real development happens in game. That's where you develop. That's where you start to figure out who they can and can't guard, what they can and can't do on the offensive end, what they need to do physicality wise to become better. You need to have a lot of tape for them to watch over the off season, where it's not just like, hey, here's a handful of minutes here and there, and you played a lot at the end of the season whenever things aren't really real.
Yeah.
All that tape, I just throw it all out. But we're October, November, December tape is going to be the most real tape that you can get for this Thunder team. After that, I don't know. January into February, maybe you'll have some as well. But this is where it's really happening. And this is where I'm like, you got to play them. You just got to play those guys. You got to figure out what you have. And it doesn't need to be giant minutes. I think Jalen Williams, J-Dub, can play a lot. I think that he'll play a lot. Jang, I don't know that he'll play a ton. I think you play him against backups. I think you see what he can do. I think against the Clippers, he's going to have a ton of wing options to guard. Go throw him on a bunch of those guys and see what he can do. Especially guys that are going to have the ball. I want to see what he does when he has to guard a guy like Paul George. How does he react? Is he able to slide his feet with Paul George? Is he able to play with him? Can he guard Kawhi Leonard? I don't expect him to do well, but those to me are like pretty big points of emphasis. Is like, these are the kind of guys we drafted you to be a good offensive player and to guard these kind of guys. Let's see where you are on day one.
Yeah, let him do it.
I think you do, because to me, I think Baisley can do it to a degree. Like, I just don't need those data points. Those are not the data points that I need to get this team where it needs to go. I think Baisley's kind of proven the kind of player that he is, and I think that he's a guy that needs to go play on a different team. And I think that these guys, with the investment that you made, you need to give them developmental time and early, because I think that, Jang showed enough where you're like, yeah, play him with the Thunder.
Don't waste time with the Blue. Just play him with the Blue if you have like a home back-to-back and you have time and whatever.
Right. And there will be moments where they need to take a look at some other guys. That will happen, but I think that you need to find minutes for those guys today. Before we go, the Thunder waived all the Rockets guys, which is kind of what I'd hoped that they do. I didn't really have a ton of interest in any of those guys. And they did something surprising. They signed Isaiah Joe, who was waived by the 76ers. Joe is an interesting player. He hadn't played super well for the 76ers, hadn't shot the ball super well for the 76ers so far, just kind of right at league average from three. I like the chance that they're taking with him. He's basically just like, hey, Lindy Waters, here is competition for this spot. Who wants it? Because I guarantee you that Isaiah Joe doesn't have a whole lot of guaranteed money on this contract. We don't have the terms yet, but I would almost guarantee you that there's not a whole lot guaranteed on this. And so they could, if Lindy just completely outperforms him, then Lindy could still earn that spot, and they could waive Isaiah Joe and bring Lindy in. That's possible. Mm-hmm. Or they have Isaiah Joe on a very, I assume, very team-friendly deal. So it's interesting. It's good that they bring in guys that are designated shooters. I mean, you need to have those kind of guys. And odds are he and Lindy both probably won't be on the Thunder in 2 years. But I think these are worthwhile chances to take on guys, because there will be somebody, whether it's on the Thunder or on some other team, there will be a next Max Strus. There will be a next Duncan Robinson. There will be a next, whoever the next guy the Heat bring in. There will be that next guy. And to me, cycling shooter after shooter through this to try to see if you can find one is well worth your time. And it's something that I think that when Joe was waived, I was like, oh man, that'd be great if the Thunder would pick him up. I don't think they'll do it, but it'd be great if they picked him up. And they did. And so just a worthwhile shot on a shooter from the wing.
Yeah. And I'm also glad that they tried Nwaba for a couple of games.
Yeah.
I think that he showcased that he is an aggressive defender that can play in transition. It's not what OKC needs, but it's good that they at least gave him a chance. I think OKC made the right choice in keeping a guy like Joe. I know that a lot of us thought, hey, why not Lindy? I think that, he signed a 2 years deal as a two-way guy. And at some point, as a team, you have to take advantage of your position. Like, that is a contract. If he weren't signed to a 2 years, 2-way deal, probably this is Lindsay's spot right now. Because he showed enough to grant at least a non-guaranteed type deal like the one that Joe had. But they had an opportunity, and this is what a good team should do. And I'm sure that everyone will be happy at the end of the season, no matter what. And I'm sure that Lindsay has a good chance to be a little bit more than a 2-way if he continues working. Yeah. But he also needs to have better percentage, because he is a shooter, you can tell. But at some point, in order for him to be a good NBA player, he has to shot 43% from three, something crazy. Because otherwise, I mean, there are plenty of guys that can be 36% on high volume, I think, with no defense at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Lindy a lot.
I hope he makes it.
I hope he makes it too. He did shoot 42.9% from three in the preseason, 91% from the line.
Yeah,
it's great. He's got to prove that at the NBA level. He's got pretty good size. He bulked up a little bit over the summer, but we're going to need to see some stuff from him. And the problem is, like, I just don't know that there's minutes there for him, because we're talking Dort, Trey Mann, J-Dub, Giddey. You got to get minutes for Jang. I think you have to get minutes for Aaron Wiggins too, who looked really good in the preseason. I think that Poku is going to occupy at least some minutes on the wing.
Yeah.
Kenrich Williams is going to play for this team. He's under contract for a long time and is a leader on and off the court. He's going to play. There's just not a lot of space for him or Isaiah Joe, for that matter.
Those guys have to be ready, extremely ready, because they'll have chances, but not many. I mean, as you mentioned, there are multiple guys that are pushing. Maybe Kenrich is not one of those guys that is pushing to get on the court every single night. He will play probably 50, 60 games. So there is time available. But those are the guys that will spend a lot of time in the G League. And they need to be absolutely insanely good there in order for OKC to continue. I expect Joe to play quite a lot in the G League, to be honest.
He's somebody that if you want to get a good look as to how he functions within the Thunder offense, throw him in the G League, because they play the same offense. I mean, Cam Woods, who was on the Thunder bench last year, is now the head coach, and they shuffled in the head coach of the G League team up to the Thunder. It's kind of cool the way that they develop coaches as well as players within all of this. But, it's going to be the same stuff. And I think that it's important to get a look at these guys there. I think he and Lindy will get a lot of time there and stay ready. And whenever it's time, it's like, hey, you're going to get 5 minutes tonight. We'll get you 2 or 3 shots. You better make them. Is about what it's going to be for those guys. So, all right. Preseason's over. Real basketball begins Wednesday night for the Thunder. We'll have another episode for you. Alex Spears and I will be back on Wednesday to discuss this team and further. It's exciting, man. I know there's a lot of disappointment because there's no Chet, but there's a lot to be excited about. They still have 2 other lottery picks that are going to play roles on this team, in addition to Trey Mann, the improvement of Josh Giddey. We get to see Shai Gilgeous-Alexander play on Wednesday night against the Timberwolves, which is very, very exciting.
That is very unexpected.
I kind of started to expect it after I saw him in the preseason, the way that he was working out before the game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there was a good chance that he would actually play, and he's ready, and I'm glad for that. And I think that a lot of people that thought Shai's injury was like, all right, well, Thunder are definitely going to sit him for the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season now. That kind of claps back at all the people that are saying that, like, they just want to shelf him and he needs to find a different spot or whatever. So we'll get to see Shai play, which is always fun, and see this team. This team could shock the world Wednesday. The Timberwolves have a lot to figure out within their offense with this new team. So
listen to you. Like, you already abandoned the tanking ship and you're
Oh
ready
no,
for
no, no.
winning basketball games like opening night against a team that
Oh, it would
is.
be so much. Okay, can we just
I
take a
I
take
almost
a page out of
don't
Taylor's book
recognize you.
and come
What
from?
happened in vacation? Like, what is this optimism?
I don't think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be. I mean, they're going to be in the lottery. They're going to be fifth or sixth in the lottery. That's what I think. That's where I
Fifth
think
or sixth in the league, I heard. Like that's bold.
fighting for home court advantage. No, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't put it. I mean, I think there's a chance that they could shock the world Wednesday and
Yeah,
beat the
there was a
Timberwolves.
question that I think we should briefly mention that asked, "Hey, do you think it's more likely that they are one game away from the play-in than, or they are just first in the reverse standing?" And it was not phrased like this; it was much better,
Yeah,
but it was about aliens coming from the future. I don't know. I think that it's way more likely that they are one game away from the play-in than they are the worst team in the league. That
I would.
is, yeah.
I would agree. They're not going to be as bad as Utah or San Antonio
Other
this
than
year.
the Rockets. Why everyone thinks that the Rockets will be dramatically better?
I think the Rockets are going to stink, man. I think
Yeah, they're going to
they have
stink
a
real
chance.
bad.
They have a better chance of being the worst record
Yes.
in the league than one game away from the play-in. I mean, they definitely do. And I just think the Thunder play a brand of basketball that's too good to be the worst team in the league, and they have proven that with non-NBA players over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
They have proven that. And now, here's the deal. Isaiah Joe and Lindy Waters, who are like fringe NBA players, are not going to get minutes on this team. They're not. I don't think this team. I think that they're going to be pulling levers, and they're going to have to do it decently early. They're going to start pulling levers, but they're going to want to be a part of this draft. I just don't think they have it in them to be that bad, to be so bad that they are in the bottom three. They're not going to be a 14% team. I think they could be a team that has like the fourth or fifth best odds. I don't think that's out of the question.
No,
But they're going to have to pull some levers to get there. Like their coaching is too competent. Their players are too competent. We were talking about it earlier. Like they take threes and shots at the rim. They play a very efficient style of basketball. Now they're going to have to hit shots for it to matter and for it to actually work. They play an efficient style of basketball. They don't shoot the ball efficiently enough for it to work yet. But they play a good brand of basketball, and it's won them games they shouldn't have won. But I think if you're Sam and you look at what you've got with this roster and you look at the upcoming draft, you want to be a part of this next draft.
You are going to just whisper to Dignall's ears, "Hey, please start Baisley, JRE, and Dort for the entire season.
Wow.
And play them at least 18 minutes together. I promise you, you can do whatever you want in the remaining minutes. We would be okay."
Yeah. It's gonna be a fascinating season in a lot of ways. And like the bottom of the league is going to be interesting. I think the rest of the league, there's not that many teams at the bottom.
No.
I think the race to the bottom is going to be interesting. And then I think that the rest of the teams are going to be, it's going to be a fascinating season overall. But with the Thunder, I think there's more than meets the eye, because if you listen to like season preview stuff, there's just not a lot of people talking. And honestly, they shouldn't. And it's not me like complaining like, oh, the Thunder need more national play. Like they don't. Like they're not there yet. They will get there. The beginning of next season, I think that there will be some buzz, because you're going to have Chet coming back. You're going to have the 23 pick. They will make some roster moves, like they just inevitably will, and things will look different. So I think this is going to be a really fascinating season. And if guys want to be a part of the next great Thunder team, they're going to have to prove some stuff this year.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be interesting too. All right. That's it for today's show. Again, go to our Twitter account @DownToDunk and find the link. I'll go ahead and retweet it. on my account and on the Down to Dunk account for Down to Dunk night. Join us. They're playing the Denver Nuggets. It's going to be a super fun game. You get to see Nikola Jokic in person, which is really cool in itself. And you'll likely get to see Shea and Giddey and Dort and J-Dub and all these guys do their thing. It's going to be really, really fun. So come join us. Half court shot for courtside seats and a big picture with all the Down to Dunkers out there. It should be so much fun. So be sure to go get your tickets for that. And we will talk to you guys again on Wednesday.